What goes into making a great wrestling card? A little bit of technical mat grappling here, an incredible technical display there, a hoss match between two big lads quabbing 12 bells out of each other, a death match, a comedy match between two invisible wrestlers, main event, rinse repeat. After all, wrestling is a variety act and familiarity breeds contempt after all, and wrestling has been packed with gimmick matches, some more successful than others. Promoters are always trying to cook up variations of some bouts with brawls, hardcore matches and variations of the ladder match. Sometimes they can pay off, like WWE's Royal Rumble or WCW's War Games match. Sadly, quite often, many gimmick matches end up being horrible and fodder for lovers of bad wrestling. Too often promoters take the "it's not broke but let's fix it anyway" mantra and try to mess with a gimmick bout that already worked. 9 times out of 10 it ends horribly. It's amazing how some of the most iconic gimmick matches led to terrible variations, as these 10 bouts show how messing with the original idea isn't always a good idea. Welcome to Honor Wrestling Club, and in today's video we will be counting down the 10 iconic gimmick wrestling matches and the worst version that has ever been put out there. However, before we crack on with the list, I'd first like to welcome you to Honor Wrestling Club and let you know that if you enjoy what you see today, don't forget to hit that like button, share the video with your friends and subscribe for more awesome content. Welcome to the club. Now, without further ado, let's crack on with number 10, the Ultimate X match. And the one we will be focusing on today is the Elevation X, which lowered the concept. Ultimate X is probably the best gimmick match in TNA history. It's a ladder bout without ladders, with the prize, often a title belt, suspended between cables above the ring and the drama of guys climbing to get it. It's been home to terrific matches and some fantastic spots with the high-flying X Division guys, which was the bread and butter of TNA for the mid-2000s. However, TNA, and get used to hearing those 3 letters throughout this list, had to ruin their own genius in 2007 when AJ Styles faced Rhino in Elevation X, replacing the cables with scaffolding. Now, scaffold matches always suck, and this was no different, with slow action before Styles took a lame fall in the ring. TNA repeated it later before retiring the concept as Ultimate X was always so much better than this, big air quotes here, improvement. In number 9 we have the casket match, and the variation we'll be focusing on today, the last rites match that should be buried. Hi TNA, how are you doing? This match was held at Destination 10 in 2007, and it was meant to push Abyss more than Sting, and Vince Russo, you know, that lovely chap who keeps ruining wrestling, claims he didn't come up with it. So, you know, there we are. Now, while The Undertaker made the casket match famous, it has been utilised in various ways. If not an actual casket, rather than some idea of shoving a guy into a container to slam it shut. It can be dramatic and powerful when done right. TNA, though, did it very, very wrong with the last rites match between Abyss and Sting in 2007. They fought in a ring with fake headstones before Abyss waved down a casket on big wires. He tried to put Sting in it, but Sting fought back before putting Abyss into the casket, which was slowly risen up. The Fire Russo chants summed up the fan feelings on a bout that looked like a cheap horror movie. In number 8, we're rounding out our trilogy on TNA idiocy here with the Reverse Battle Royal, a variation on, you guessed it, the Battle Royal. Now this was the first held on October 26, 2006 episode of Impact, and it was voted as the worst worked match of 2006 in the Wrestling Observer. However, the variation we'll be focusing on today is the Bound for Glory 2007 one. TNA, the only company that could screw up one of the easiest gimmick matches around. You take a Battle Royal, you know, the simple concept, throw people over the top rope, and then they'll eliminate them until one guy remains. Simple. That's what execs at TNA thought, and they thought they should mix this up with a reverse battle royal. What's a reverse battle royal, I hear you ask? Well, As part of a wider competition in 2007, TNA cooked up the Reverse Battle Royal, where guys would stand outside the ring and had to fight to get into it. So you had wrestlers unable to perform the simple act of getting into the ring. You know the thing they do on all their entrances? Then, after a dozen guys or so were in the ring, they'd fight to throw each other out, and the last two would have a standard match, and then they'd face but the order people were thrown out would equate to a tournament, and then the winner of the tournament would fight the winner of the match at the end of the normal battle royal part. Look, it's very simple. Let's start over. Vince Russo was born. The end. Not only is that complicated to the point of having no stakes, it was laughable sight seeing them flop around and make getting inside a ring a struggle. And this was added to the back catalogue of TNA's most laughable moments. In number 7, we're moving away from TNA. Hurrah! Oh no, it's to WCW. Never mind, let's go back. But we're focusing on World War III, which was a variation on the Royal Rumble, and wasn't quite as good, but still could be enjoyable. Now, Pat Patterson struck gold with the Royal Rumble, and it's little wonder that other companies would attempt to emulate it. TNA had the Gauntlet match, AEW has the Casino Brawls, and WCW had this. They made no secret that World War III event was their attempt to copy the Rumble and use the approach of bigger is better for 3 battle royals at once in 3 rings. The key problem is that it is impossible to keep track of 3 matches happening at once, and WCW complicated it more with touches of guys moving from one ring to another, pinfalls counting and other turns. It lasted 4 years but was never a huge success. At the end of the day, it was just another failed WCW gimmick match, and my word would there be a lot of them. In number 6, we have the Hell in a Cell variation, the Kennel from Hell, which was horrible. Hell in a Cell is one of, if not the best gimmick matches ever, and it's been home to some of the most iconic moments and most important character creating moments of all time. So it's sad it's also home to one of the worst bouts of the Attitude Era. The entire Big Boss Man vs Al Snow feud was crazy, with Boss Man kidnapping Snow's dog and then supposedly cooking and feeding them up to Snow. What a year Boss Man had in 1999, eh? He went from this to kidnapping Big Show's dad and dragging it around the graveyard. But anyway, back to the Kennel from Hell. So we had a cage match with actual dogs roaming around, which was supposed to add to the danger of everything. Instead, the dogs looked more bored than the crowd watching, held by leashes and doing their business while the ugly match proceeded. It was a total mess from start to finish, and little wonder even Snow has apologised for how this bout turned out. In number 5, don't worry WCW, we haven't forgotten about you, because we've got the variation on the Falls Count Anywhere match of the Don't Go Outside the Ring match. What a way to make Dean Malenko look like a fool. A Falls Count Anywhere match is a fun battle, involving plenty of great action around the arena, usually. True, there have been duds over the years, but you can't mess with a concept like this. That is, unless you're WCW. At Sold Out 2000, just a wonderful year of wrestling, that I have to say for WCW. Kidman and Dean Malenko were to face off in a bout with the stipulation that whoever exited the ring first was eliminated. The idea was supposed to be a thrill of each guy trying to force the other out like a battle royal. The flaw is that going outside the ring is so instinctive you can't help but do it. Sure enough, after less than 3 minutes, Malenko rolled under the ropes to collect himself, only for the ringing bell to make him realise he'd just lost. Both he and Kidman were clearly embarrassed by how one of the smartest guys in wrestling created such an amazing botch. In number 4, we have the Extreme Elimination Chamber, which was extremely ugly, and adding weapons somehow made this worse. The Elimination Chamber seemed like an odd concept at first in 2002, but it ended up becoming a smash success for WWE and may have stealthily become their most reliable gimmick match. It's a great brawl with top action and often some big title changes. whether they take place during the actual match itself or afterwards, like Edge's at New Year's Revolution 2006. The one time they tried to mess with this formula, the result was arguably the worst ever Elimination Chamber bout at the infamous December to Dismember pay-per-view in 2006. The addition of weapons in each pod only took away from the fight rather than add to it. It wasn't helped by poor action and fan favourites like Rob Van Dam and CM Punk being taken out early. Finally, Bobby Lashley, the opposite of everything ECW stood for, as he was basically John Cena without the personality, winning the title. Little wonder this show remained so hated by WWE fans, and it killed ECW as a whole. Good job everyone, gold stars all round. In number 3, we have the King of the Mountain match, which is too convoluted. There is way too much going on for a reverse ladder bout. Now, I will admit, this may have its fans, but TNA's variation of the ladder match remains a far too convoluted take on what can be an incredibly simple idea. The main idea of using a ladder to put a belt up on a hook rather than taking it down could actually be fun. However, if you're hearing that thinking, that seems way too simple, then good news, TNA are hiring. Now, as we said, if TNA left it at just that, it could have worked. Instead, they added way too much. The 5 or 6 wrestlers battle it out with falls counting anywhere, usually involving ladders, tables, chairs, and more. Oh my! Now, you need to pin someone in order to become eligible for going up the ladder, while the wrestler that got pinned spends a few minutes in a small penalty box cage thinking about all the career choices they made to get to this point. This was just a mess. It's amazing that TNA kept it up for so long as a signature bout, given how complex it all is. The only reason we can think of is that because 5 or 6 dudes in a ladder match is usually going to have a few good spots, but then the response to that is, just do a normal ladder match. There's rethinking the wheel, and then there's adding 4 more wheels to the wheel so it becomes a square, and then it no longer turns, and now your car's broken. Moving on, in at number 2, we have a variation on a steel cage, which is what happens when you shoot it with a shrink ray, and you get the shark cage, which was a joke. We don't mean the ones where someone's hanging over the ring. Those are a bit boring, but fundamentally okay. However, there have been many poor variations on a cage match over the years, like the Punjabi prison match or TNA's electrified cage match. But if you had to go to the all-time worst, it has to be the shark cage match. Usually, the idea is that the interfering heel manager is locked into a cage and suspended. A fun sight to add to the bout with the manager howling at things. And as we've said, usually okay as long as Enzo Amore isn't slithering out of one like a gecko. However, the one we're focusing on here took place in the 1970s between Don Kent, part of the Fabulous Kangaroos, and Jay Strongbow, who was a 4-time WWE Tag Team Champion. Now, they fought in a match inside a shark cage inside the ring. Yes, a structure barely big enough to hold one of these guys, and both were shoved inside it for big-time wrestling in 1977. A match where the two couldn't even throw punches or kicks, and the cage door kept flying open, yet they couldn't exit because they weren't booked to, so there are points where the ref is just having to hold the door shut. It's quite interesting and unique to start with, and then it gets really, really boring, because nobody can do anything because they're trapped inside a really small structure. It's a stupid idea, and thankfully it never caught on. At number 1, we have War Games 2000. Leave it to Vince Russo to screw up War Games, possibly the greatest stipulation of all time. Now, WCW should always be credited with one of, if not the greatest gimmick matches ever in War Games. So many of them have been genuine classics, and even the modern ones have been really, really good. It was a simple but effective idea, as tossing 8 or 10 guys into a cage for brawling with no pinfalls was epic. WCW did play on this a few times over the years, and in 2000 they brought it back for a special Nitro called Russo's Revenge. Yep, you can already tell this is going to suck. Instead of the classic teams, wrestlers fought in a triple-decker doomsday cage, coming in every few minutes. Brawling happened with the point being not to pin or submit your opponent, but to climb to the top of the cage, grab the WCW World title, and then climb back down. It was a total mess, ending with Russo handing Kevin Nash the belt so he could walk out, and a shame this was the last time War Games would grace WCW. Thank God for Triple H bringing it back in 2017 and it being used regularly, because this could not go down as the final War Games match in wrestling history. And there you have it. What do you think of the video? What do you think is the worst variation of a stipulation ever used in wrestling? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it around with your friends, go on, make them watch some really bad matches. It'll be really funny. And don't forget to subscribe to Honor Wrestling Hub for more videos like this in the future. However, that's all for now. Until next time, I'd just like to thank you for watching and welcome to the club.